Back. This is seventh grade art. And this would go to painting and to drawing classes. What we're going to do today is we're in a very limited light source. I actually have one light source going on right here. And then I have on this table, I have a wine bottle that's been painted white. That wine bottle represents how we see light. Most often we have to think of our light source as the sun. Right now, a majority of that is bathed in sunlight. So we see it as, but if I move my light source, you can see that it changes and that it will become different. So, and as I adjust my mirror or my light or my camera, mirror, and I move in, a couple things we're going to see. One, we're going to see the area of light that impacts this wine bottle the most. It's going to be the brightest right here. It's going to go to what we call its local color. So white is the local color. This is where we see white out of the two, a little bit with a little, if this was a color like blue, it would be straight blue. And this would be sky blue over here. Okay. Now, white is, it's pretty much white, but it gets a little bit of a shadow that starts to happen right here. Now, right here, we get something that we call the core shadow. Some people will even call it the terminator shadow because it is the point of no light. When we demonstrate this in a drawing, we shade this in as dark as we possibly can. Now, in this case, it's only about that wide, but that is the darkest possible space for the shadow. Back here is the rest of the shadow, and this would be a very dark gray, the colored pencil, because this is an area that is what we would refer to as just the regular shadow. There is a fancy term for it, but what happens is it gets light that bounces off the table here, shines up. It get light from my back room, and it shines off of that. So it's dark, but it's not as dark as my core shadow or my cast shadow. Now, if you look at my cast shadow is really dark. And it has an area right here where it gets a little fuzzy. And there's an area on this side where it gets a little fuzzy. So these are the parts of the shadow that we want to talk about. The cast shadow, the core shadow, the terminator, they are as dark as we can possibly make it. This is not as dark as we can possibly make it. There's going to be a little bit of what we call local color right here with a little bit of shadow in it. And then this area is where the light hits. And if you were drawing, you could leave that white. If you were using white charcoal, you could add that there. If you're using pastel, that's what we use there. Now, it changes if we use this fake skull made out of styrofoam. And this changes now as I turn it. There's the Terminator shadow is right there. But as I turn this head, notice what happens. The Terminator shadow moved. The highlight is here. There's a mid-tone here. This is the darker gray, but the core shadow is the darkest, and so is my cast shadow. So these are all aspects that can happen. Now, that was a fake skull, but what if we brought in a real skull? And we got a cow skull here. Now, the cow skull is mostly bathed in light right now, but as I turn it and change it, you're going to see that it gets different. The core shadow appears. I get the darkest part right there, and then I get spots where it isn't as dark. And it casts a huge cast shadow. And we can continue to change and see how that evolves as it goes around. Now, we have a lot of different things that we could demonstrate and talk about. I've got a paper mache buffalo here. Sorry about that. I'm losing control of my camera. Notice now this buffalo has a cast shadow that comes off of it. If I turned it sideways and looked at it, now we get a really distinct line. There's the core shadow runs right along there. There's some here. There's some on each leg. And then there's the ambient shadow here. And then we get the cast shadow. So every object that we know, it's bathed in light, but it gets some really dramatic shadows. This will really make your drawings and your paintings stronger. If we take the orange guy that's holding my tape, now and we move in